The sun climbed slowly over the training grounds, casting long pale bands of light across the rugged terrain as the Marine made his way toward the open clearing where the day always began with drills and quiet orders spoken with firm precision. Yet on this morning the routine felt different, even faintly distorted, as if an unseen force had shifted something in the air. He noticed the older woman standing near the supply crates, her posture calm yet oddly deliberate, and he assumed thought that she was part of the logistics crew sent to observe the exercises when she greeted him with a soft nod. He responded with a friendly laugh and spoke lightly about how confusing all the ranks could be, especially for people still adjusting to the structure of the unit. He thought nothing of it as he continued talking, but her steady gaze carried an intensity that seemed out of place for someone assigned to simple support work. As the Marines stretched and prepared for the morning drills, he kept finding himself glancing toward her. He could not explain why her presence unsettled him, since she appeared harmless and quiet. Yet each time she moved, there was a subtle precision in her step and a quiet confidence in her posture that felt more in line with a seasoned leader than with any of the visiting personnel he had met before. The others around him seemed to sense it too, though no one spoke openly about it. Instead, they exchanged brief looks and cautious gestures, each unsure of how to interpret the silent tension spreading through the camp. The commanding officer had mentioned the possibility of an inspection, but had offered no details about who might attend or when they might arrive. For days, speculation had simmered through whispered conversations around the mess tent and outside the barracks. No one expected the inspector to appear without announcement, and certainly not disguised as a regular staff member. The Marine brushed off these thoughts, hoping to refocus on preparing for the drills, yet the feeling that something important was happening beneath the surface refused to leave him. The woman moved again through the clearing, observing the equipment and occasionally pausing to speak to one of the instructors. Her voice remained low, and even with a calm rhythm that carried an undeniable authority, despite her unmarked uniform. The instructors responded to her with a respect that caught the Marine off guard. Their posture straightened whenever she approached, and their tone shifted in subtle ways that suggested they recognized something he did know. Watched her now as she examined a set of maps spread across a table. The early light glinted softly on her sleeves, and the Marine noticed how naturally she held herself as she traced the terrain lines with one finger. She studied the layout with the focus of someone deeply familiar with operational strategy, and not simply a visitor or an observer. The realization unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. During warm-up drills, he found himself distracted, missing steps and losing rhythm, something that rarely happened. His fellow Marines cast him confused looks, wondering why his usually sharp focus had dulled. The woman, meanwhile, continued to observe from a distance, occasionally shifting her attention from one group to another, as if measuring their performance against an unspoken standard. The instructors maintained their usual discipline, but each time her gaze swept over them, their faces tightened with faint apprehension that did not go unnoticed by the Marine. He tried to shake off the tension, reminding himself that people often read too much into unfamiliar situations, yet every instinct he had developed through years of training insisted that there was more to her presence than the simple role she appeared to play. Instincts honed through countless drills had taught him to sense hidden layers of threat or authority, and now those same instincts whispered warnings that he could not ignore. As the morning advanced, the light grew brighter, and the camp stirred with increasing energy. The sound of boots on gravel filled the clearing, accompanied by the steady calls of instructors guiding their teams through tactical maneuvers. Despite the noise, the woman seemed to move in a quiet sphere of her own, detached yet present, fully aware of everything unfolding around her. The Marine felt the weight of her attention each time her gaze swept across his group, and he sensed that she was evaluating not only their performance, but their instincts, discipline, and reactions under pressure. He caught snippets of conversations among the others. Some spoke of rumors that a high-ranking official had been planning a discreet visit to assess cohesion and readiness. Someone else mentioned a story about a general who traveled without escorts to observe raw interactions among lower ranks. The Marine could not confirm any of it, yet the possibility lodged itself firmly in his thoughts, leaving him uneasy during a short break. He approached the water station, where the woman happened to stand nearby. She greeted him with the same calm nod as before, and he felt a strange discomfort settle in his chest. Remembering his earlier jokes, he wondered if he had sounded foolish or disrespectful. She had not reacted negatively at the time, but something in her composed expression now made him replay every word he had spoken with new anxiety. He asked if she needed any assistance, and she replied with a simple assurance that she was fine. Her voice carried no anger or amusement, only a balanced neutrality that revealed nothing and offered no comfort. As he returned to his unit, he heard one of the senior instructors quietly instruct the others to prepare for a shift in schedule. Though the order was delivered with a controlled tone, there was a tension beneath the surface, as if they were bracing for something significant. The Marine realized that the entire structure of the day seemed to be adjusting around the presence of the woman, who still stood calmly near the water station, watching the instructors and the trainees with the assessing focus of a leader. Concealing her true intent, Marine finally understood that her presence was changing the rhythm of the camp. The atmosphere grew heavier, as if the air itself sensed the importance of the moment. The instructors began to speak with more formality. The trainees corrected their posture with greater urgency, and even the sound of boots on gravel seemed sharper, more precise. The woman moved again through the camp, taking her time with each observation, as though she had all day to evaluate the readiness of every person present. By midday, the Marine could not ignore the growing unease inside him. The whispers of a hidden identity had transformed into a silent certainty, shared among many, though no one dared to say it aloud. The woman seemed unbothered by the tension she created, moving with the quiet assurance of someone who knew exactly what she was doing and why. She watched the Marine once more, and he felt a chill run through him, as if she had seen straight through his earlier confidence down to the restless questions now stirring inside him. The camp waited in that heavy silence, every person sensing that an unseen threshold was approaching, that something long concealed was about to rise to the surface and reveal a truth far greater than any of them expected. Afternoon sun settled lower across the training grounds, casting long shadows that stretched like dark, silent warnings over the gravel as the assembled personnel formed into precise rows awaiting instructions that had not yet been spoken. The Marine stood among them, heart pounding with an uneasy rhythm, as he sensed that the moment he had feared and yet somehow expected was approaching with steady certainty. The woman who had moved quietly through the camp all morning now stepped into the open space before them with a stillness that seemed to command the attention of every living soul in the clearing. Her unmarked uniform fluttered softly in the breeze, and the Marine felt the weight of her presence settle across the group like a tide ready to pull them into deeper waters. The commanding officer gave a brief nod, acknowledging her without a single word, and in that gesture, the Marine realized that the truth had already been known to the highest ranks in the camp. The instructors stood straighter, each one tightening their posture, as if bracing for the impact of her revelation. She surveyed the rows with a gaze sharp enough to cut through every mask and every assumption, and when her eyes passed over the Marine, he felt a jolt of recognition that made his breath catch in his chest. It was not anger or disappointment he saw, but an understanding far more powerful and far more unsettling. The silence in the clearing grew dense as she reached for the flap on her plain outer layer, and in one slow, deliberate motion, she pulled the fabric aside, revealing the 4-star insignia that glimmered with muted authority beneath the fading light. The Marine felt the world tilt around him as the sight registered fully, and every memory of their earlier interaction replayed in his mind with new and overwhelming clarity. The whispers that had floated through the camp turned into a collective intake of breath as the truth spread like a shockwave through the assembled. Rank Shi stood before them now, not as a visitor nor as an observer, but as a general of the highest order, a leader, whose decisions shaped the lives of thousands and whose judgment carried the weight of national security. Her expression remained composed, but there was a quiet gravity in her eyes as she began to speak, her voice steady and resonant despite the absence of amplification. Her words carried across the clearing with a calm authority that silenced even the restless wind, and each syllable seemed to settle into the minds of the Marines like heavy stones. The Marine felt himself shrinking under the memory of his earlier jokes spoken so casually, without understanding. Who stood before him? He wondered if she remembered every word as clearly as he did now, and whether she had already formed an opinion of his character. Yet, as she continued speaking, he began to sense something unexpected in her tone. There was discipline. Yes, and an undeniable command, but there was also a subtle current of purpose beneath her words, as if she had come not to judge but to observe something deeper in their interactions. Something raw and unfiltered that could not be seen when rank was openly displayed. She walked slowly along the front line, pausing occasionally to meet the eyes of an instructor or a trainee with the quiet intensity of someone who had learned to read entire lives in a single glance. The Marine felt the air thicken as she approached his position step by measured step until she finally stopped directly before him. Her gaze settled on him with a stillness that made the camp fade into the background, leaving only the two of them suspended in a moment. Drawn tight with suspense and uncertainty, she said nothing at first, simply studying him with the focus of someone who weighed not only actions but the intentions behind them. The Marine felt exposed, as though she could see straight through layers of confidence and bravado he wore like armor. He stood rigid, waiting for a reprimand he felt certain must be coming, for it was unthinkable that a joke made toward a four-star general could pass without consequence. But when she finally spoke, her voice held not anger but measured calm, and the Marine realized she had deliberately concealed her identity to witness the natural, unfiltered behavior of those she led from afar. She reminded him of the importance of humility and awareness, not through accusation but through the quiet strength of her presence. Her words carried a lesson rather than punishment, and as she spoke, he felt the shame that had consumed him begin to shift into something else, a deeper understanding of the responsibility carried by every member of the armed forces, regardless of rank. She spoke of leadership, built not on fear but on respect, earned through character and consistency, and the Marine felt each word carve itself into his memory with lasting permanence. Camp remained silent around them, suspended in awe as she continued addressing the entire group. She spoke of the importance of readiness, integrity, and the ability to adapt to unexpected challenges, traits she had seen glimpses of throughout the day from instructors and trainees alike. Her voice rose with a quiet conviction that reached even those standing at the farthest edges of the clearing, and the Marine sensed that her message carried a weight meant to shape not just their actions today, but the foundation of their service moving forward. She finished speaking. She allowed the silence to settle like dust after a storm, letting the significance of her presence sink into the minds of every person before her. Then, with a final sigh, measured nod, she turned from the formation and began walking toward the command tent, leaving behind an air thick with disbelief and profound respect. The Marine watched her go, feeling the heavy tension in his chest shift once more, this time into an unexpected gratitude for the lesson she had delivered with such restrained power. The instructors slowly resumed their positions, and the commanding officer dismissed the formation with a tone sharper and more reverent than usual. The Marines dispersed in subdued silence, each processing the extraordinary moment they had just witnessed. Yet the Marine remained rooted for a long time, staring at the path she had taken, replaying every detail of their encounter with a clarity sharpened by the weight of hindsight. The sun dipped lower and the shadows stretched across the camp. He finally moved toward the barracks, feeling the lingering echo of her words. accompany him with each step. He knew the day would stay with him for the rest of his life, not as a moment of embarrassment, but as a turning point, a reminder of the unseen presence of true leadership and the importance of carrying himself with humility, even when he believed no one important was watching. The camp settled into nightfall, but the memory of the four-star general revealing her identity remained alive in every corner of the training grounds. A silent testament to the power of presence, truth, and unexpected revelation.